An old man walks up a dirt path with a heavy bronze knife tucked into his leather belt. Same number again and again. Most people assume the number 3 in these stories is just a narrative detail. There is no door. There is only the crushing, rhythmic heartbeat of a sea monster. 1 day passes, 2 days pass, 3 days, and 3 nights in the dark. Look at Jonah chapter 2. He describes this space as the belly of Sheol, the realm of the dead. He is buried under the ocean floor, the bars of the earth close behind him forever. He is a corpse waiting to dissolve. But look at what happens on the 3rd day. The timeline reaches its limit. The Hebrew measure is full. The necessary weight of the dark is achieved. Jonah speaks into the pitch black. He prays, and God speaks to the fish. The massive jaws open. Muscle spasms push him forward. The creature violently heaves. Jonah hits the dry sand. Day 3 brings the dry land. Just like Genesis, the sun hits his face. Sand grits between his teeth. He breathes fresh, warm air. Most people read this story as a divine timeout, a penalty box for a disobedient prophet. But the belly of the fish is not a tomb. It is a transport. The 3 days in the dark were the exact vehicle required to bring a dead man back to the shore of the living. God did not send the fish to destroy Jonah. He sent the fish to save him from drowning. The dark was the rescue. A quick way to say it was a short trip. A convenient, ancient literary device used to move the plot forward. Jonah walks out of his watery grave. He walks to Nineveh. A whole city turns around. The Hebrew scriptures lock this 3-day pattern into stone. It becomes an unbreakable blueprint. But centuries later, a carpenter from Nazareth stands in front of a furious crowd. They demand a sign. They want proof of his authority. And he points them directly back to the crushing dark of the Mediterranean Sea. He claims the sign of Jonah, but the language he uses to describe his own 3-day descent introduces a Greek word that changes the architecture entirely. Look at Matthew chapter 16, verse 21. Jesus is walking the dusty, rocky roads of Caesarea Philippi with his disciples. The political tension in the air is heavy. The religious authorities are circling. And for the first time, Jesus explicitly maps out the violence waiting for him in Jerusalem. He tells them he must suffer. He must be killed. And on the 3rd day, he must be raised. But the vocabulary he chooses to describe this resurrection is startling. The word the English translators use for raised is the Greek egeriro. It appears over 140 times in the New Testament. But its primary meaning in the ancient Greek world is not a medical description of bringing a dead corpse back to biological life. Its fundamental root is much simpler, or maybe a simple numeric pointer back to the Trinity. But if you look closer at the Hebrew geography of these specific moments, it means to awaken, to rouse from sleep, to stir up someone who is resting. You see it in Matthew chapter 8, verse 25. A violent storm is tearing the Sea of Galilee apart. Icy water is pouring over the wooden sides of the fishing boat. The disciples are terrified, shouting over the roaring wind. Their clothes soaked. And Jesus is fast asleep on a cushion in the stern. The text says the disciples went and woke him. The Greek verb is egeiro. They roused him from slumber. When Jesus looks at a paralyzed man lying motionless on a mat and tells him to get up, he uses egeiro. Wake your limbs. Stand to your feet. That root changes everything about how you read the promise of the 3rd day. When Jesus tells his followers he will be egeiro on the 3rd day, he is deliberately subverting the permanence of death. To a 1st century mind, the grave was absolute. It was a stone door locked from the outside. The final period at the end of the human story. But by pairing the ancient Hebrew 3-day blueprint with the vocabulary of waking up, Jesus makes a staggering, cosmic claim. The grave is not a permanent residence. It is a sleeping chamber. The 3 days are not a countdown to decomposition. At what actually happens. On the other side of every 72-hour window, you start to see a reality that the literary device theory completely misses. They are the quiet, necessary hours before dawn. When he says he will be raised on the 3rd day, he is telling them that death has been fundamentally downgraded. It is no longer an executioner holding an eternal captive. It is just a temporary sleep. And the alarm clock is already set for exactly 72 hours later. The measure of the vessel will be completely filled, but a linguistic promise spoken on a sunny, dusty road is one thing. Actually stepping into the crushing reality of a Roman execution is another, because when the sky finally turns black over Golgotha, the theology of waking up collides with the brutal, violent reality of a spear. The sky above Jerusalem turns the color of bruised iron. The air grows cold in the middle of the afternoon. A Roman spear rips through flesh and cartilage. Blood and water spill into the dry, chalky dust. The breathing stops. The chest goes completely still. They pull the torn, lifeless body down from the rough, splintered wood. They carry him away from the noise of the crowd. They wash the blood from his hair in the fading light. They wrap his cold limbs in tight linen strips, heavy with 100 pounds of myrrh and aloes, a sharp, overwhelming scent that burns the back of the nose. They lay him on a flat stone slab inside a rock-hewn cave. 3 is not a measure of time. It is the architecture of a resurrection. The answer to why God operates on this specific numeric frequency. A massive, circular stone is rolled across the entrance. It hits the deep groove in the bedrock with a heavy, grinding thud. The dust settles. The Roman seal is pressed into the wax. The guards take their positions in the dark. The first day is raw, suffocating grief. The women weep in the dark, the salt drying on their faces. The disciples hide behind heavy locked doors in the upper room, jumping at every footstep in the street, tasting the metallic bite of fear in the back of their throats. The second day is silence, complete, devastating, crushing silence. The air inside the tomb is perfectly still. The blood dries into the fabric of the linen. The city of Jerusalem goes back to its business. The religious leaders sleep soundly in their beds. Confident the threat is buried, they think the story is over. They do not understand the mathematics of Revelation. The 72 hours are not a victory lap for death. They are a countdown to its defeat. Deep in the dark of the rock, the Hebrew measure is filling. The Shlishi vessel is reaching its absolute capacity. The dark is holding the seed just long enough to prove the soil is dead. And then, the third day dawns. The earth violently fractures. The ground shakes under the leather boots of the soldiers. Changes how you read every major rescue in the text. To feel the weight of this design, you cannot look at the end of the story. Light pushes into the pitch-black cave. Lungs fill with the cold morning air. A heart beats once, twice. A pulse pushes warm blood through repaired veins. He stands up from the cold stone slab. He folds the face cloth. He steps out of the grave and into the blinding morning sun. The Agero is complete. The sleeper has awakened. The 3-day architecture of God has reached its ultimate, cosmic climax. But the echo of this specific timeline does not stop at the empty tomb. Because a few years later, a Pharisee is thrown into a sudden, terrifying darkness on a dusty road to Damascus. And he will have to sit in his own 3-day grave before he can finally see the resurrection is not the final time God uses the 72-hour rule. Look at the book of Acts, chapter 9. Look at the timeline of Saul of Tarsus. He is a violent man, a Pharisee. He breathes threats against the early church. He carries written arrest warrants in his heavy leather pouch. He walks the dry, sun-baked road to Damascus. A light violently flashes from heaven. It burns brighter than the midday sun. It sears his retinas. He collapses into the hot dirt. A voice speaks from the blinding glare. When Saul stands up, he opens his eyes. He sees absolutely nothing. Pitch black. His men grab his trembling hands. They pull his stumbling body into the city. They put him in a room on a street called Straight. You cannot skip to the empty tomb or the provided ram. You have to sit in the tension of the journey. You have to walk with Abraham, and the text gives us the exact duration of his darkness. 3 days. He does not eat. He does not drink. He sits in the crushing, suffocating silence of his own mind. He replays the deaths he caused. He feels the cold walls of the room. His throat is completely dry. His entire theological framework shatters into a million jagged pieces on the stone floor. Why 3 days? Why not heal him instantly in the dirt? Why not make him wait a month? Because the divine architecture is operating. The Hebrew measure is filling up. The Shlishi vessel is reaching its absolute capacity once again. In the ancient text, blindness is frequently used as a literary metaphor for spiritual ignorance. But here, the physical blindness is the exact instrument God uses to bring actual sight. We think of revelation as instant information, a sudden, painless download of truth. But the biblical pattern shows us that revelation usually requires a burial first. You cannot unlearn decades of religious pride in an afternoon. You have to sit in the rubble of your own certainty. You have to fast from your own control. 3 days of fasting without water is a severe physiological limit. The body consumes its own resources. The mind stops fighting. God tells him to take his son, his only son, the one he loves, and offer him as a burnt offering. God is dismantling a Pharisee to build an apostle. And that kind of demolition takes time. It requires the sensory deprivation of day 2. The blindness is not a punishment. It is a preparation. Saul goes into the dark as a killer. He comes out on the 3rd day as Paul. The scales fall from his eyes like dead skin. The light floods back in. He drinks water. His physical and spiritual strength returns. The Egiero principle wakes him from his theological death. But Saul is not the only one whose eyes are locked completely shut after the crucifixion. Because on another dusty road, just miles from the empty tomb, 2 men are walking away from Jerusalem, entirely blind to the fact that the mathematics of the universe have already changed. 2 men walk the 7 miles of uneven dirt away from Jerusalem as the afternoon sun drops toward the horizon. The fine dust coats their sandaled feet. Their shoulders slump under the heavy, exhausting weight of shattered expectations. They are arguing, processing the trauma of the crucifixion, their voices tight with grief and confusion. A stranger steps into stride beside them on the road. He asks them what they are discussing, and they stop walking, their faces completely downcast in the fading light. The text says, Abraham rises early in the morning, saddles his donkey, cuts the wood, and leaves. He does not argue. He does not plead. Cleopas looks at the stranger, stunned by the apparent ignorance of the question. He explains the arrest, the trial, the brutal execution of the prophet they thought would redeem Israel. And then he speaks a sentence that carries the entire weight of biblical architecture. He says, "Besides all this, it is now the 3rd day since these things happened." Listen to the devastating irony in his voice. He knows the timeline. He knows the Hebrew measure of the Shlishi day. But because he is standing inside the psychological darkness of his own day too, he assumes the timeline has expired without a rescue. He assumes the silence of the stone tomb means the story has officially failed. The 3rd day is not a deadline they missed. It is the threshold they are currently standing on. The stranger does not pity them. He does not offer hollow, polite comfort. Instead, he begins to trace the unbroken thread of the divine blueprint, walking them through Moses and the prophets, explaining how the suffering was always the necessary doorway to the glory. They reach the village of Emmaus, just as the sky turns a deep, bruised purple. The evening air grows sharply cold. They invite the stranger inside the house to escape the encroaching night. He sits at the rough, wooden table. He takes the small loaf of baked bread. He just starts walking. And then Genesis 22 gives us a passing detail that holds the weight of the entire universe in his calloused hands. He blesses it. He tears the crust. The sound of the tearing bread triggers something deep in their paralyzed minds. The scales fall away. Their eyes are suddenly opened, and they recognize the scarred hands, the familiar face, the resurrected reality sitting at their dinner table. And in that exact fraction of a second, he vanishes from their sight. They do not panic. They do not mourn the empty chair. They look at each other, feeling the residual heat of the revelation burning violently in their chests. They realized the 72 hours did exactly what they were designed to do. The long walk in the dust was not a retreat into defeat. It was the exact path required to open their eyes. Every time God places his people in the dark, he is building a specific capacity that can finally hold the light. But when you pull all of these ancient, heavy threads together, you finally see what this divine architecture demands from you today. An old man walked 3 days toward a devastating sacrifice, and a substitute was provided on the mountain. The chaotic waters of creation waited until the 3rd day, and dry ground finally cracked open with life. An empire sat in suffocating darkness for 3 days, and the true light exposed the frailty of their gods. Behind him is a young boy carrying a bundle of wood that scrapes against his shoulders with every step. The dirt is dry under their sandals. On the 3rd day, Abraham lifted up his eyes and saw the place from afar. 72 hours of lifting a foot and putting it down. A prophet was buried in the crushing deep for 3 days, and the sea delivered him to the shores of grace. The Son of God lay motionless behind a sealed rock for 3 days, and he woke up holding the keys to death itself. A Pharisee sat entirely blind in a dark room for 3 days, and his eyes were open to an apostle's calling. 2 disciples walked in, crushing grief to the edge of the 3rd day, and the tearing of bread shattered their despair. Same number, same God. But maybe the part that stays with me most is the suffocating darkness of day 2. The terrifying realization that when Abraham looked across the fire, at his sleeping son in the cold desert night, or when the disciples locked the heavy wooden doors of the upper room, they did not have the end of the story. They just had the cold, unbroken silence of a promise that seemed completely dead. If you are in a season where the silence of God feels like a permanent abandonment, the story of the Shlishi Day is a place to breathe. The lack of movement does not mean a lack of presence. The dark is not a grave. It is an incubator. God does not use the silence to destroy you. He uses it to hollow you out, to excavate your false certainties. 72 hours of building a fire in the cold desert night, looking across the flames at the boy whose life he is supposed to end, and to build a vessel strong enough to hold the light that is coming. And may the God who has never once lost a battle to the grave meet you in the quiet of your waiting and wake you up when the measure is finally full, and waiting for a rescue that has not come. He watches the boy sleep on the hard ground. He hears his breathing. He feels the cold edge of the knife in the dark. Every step is an agonizing, bleeding obedience. The 3 days are not a delay. They are a formation. God is not stalling. He is pulling something out of the dirt of human faith that can survive the fire. But to understand exactly what is happening in the dark of that journey, you have to look at the mathematics of how God builds a universe. There is a detail hiding in plain sight, and it begins before the first human even opens their eyes. Look at Genesis chapter 1. Look at the blueprint of creation. Day 1 is light. Day 2 is the firmament. The waters divide. But day 3 changes the rhythm. On day 3, the water recedes. The dry land appears. Seeds crack open in the damp earth. Green shoots push through the dark soil. Fruit trees bear fruit. Life bursts out of a dead, watery chaos. The air is thinning out. They have been walking toward this specific ridge in the land of Moriah for exactly 72 hours. Day 3 is the first time life grows. It establishes the mathematical baseline for the rest of the text. In our modern world, we think of 3 as just a number, a quantity. But in the ancient Hebrew mind, numbers are not just math. Numbers are architecture. 3 dimensions create a physical space: length, width, and depth. 3 points make a triangle, the most structurally stable shape in the physical universe. A cord woven from 3 separate strands cannot be easily snapped. The Hebrew Bible itself is divided into 3 sections: the Torah, the prophets, the writings. The tabernacle in the wilderness is built in 3 distinct zones. The outer courtyard, dusty and loud with the sounds of animals. The holy place, quietly lit by golden lamps. The Holy of Holies, completely hidden behind a heavy percent, woven veil. 3 is the signature of wholeness. It is the footprint of a completed process. Whenever you see this number in the biblical narrative, a threshold is about to be crossed. A transition from death to life is about to occur. Look at the Hebrew people, standing at the base of Mount Sinai. They have just escaped centuries of slavery. God tells Moses to consecrate the people, wash their clothes. Wait, day 1 passes in the blistering desert heat. Day 2 passes in anxious preparation. Then comes the morning of the 3rd day. For 3 days, the father has carried a death sentence in his chest. For 3 days, the son has asked no questions. Thunder shakes the desert floor. Lightning fractures the sky. A thick, dark cloud drops over the jagged granite of the peak. The piercing blast of a ram's horn grows louder and louder until the dirt vibrates under their sandals. God speaks. A covenant is born. Look at Queen Esther. She uncovers a signed legal edict to exterminate her entire race. She sends a desperate message out to the city. Fast for me. Do not eat. Do not drink. Night and day. 1 day of biting hunger. 2 days of physical weakness. On the 3rd day, she puts on her royal robes. She walks across the polished stone floor of the inner court. She steps into the king's line of sight. She risks the executioner's blade. She speaks. A bloodbath is averted. A nation survives. 3 days of waiting. A threshold crossed. The number is not a coincidence of ancient storytelling. It is a divine vocabulary. But to understand exactly what God is speaking through this vocabulary, you have to look at the Hebrew word itself, and you have to watch it operate in a place where the sun refused to shine. Moses stretches his hand toward the sky over the heavy stone monuments of Egypt. A darkness falls over the empire, and for 3 days, the sky has been entirely silent. This is the mountain of Moriah. It is not just the absence of sunlight. Exodus chapter 10 describes it as a darkness that can be felt, a suffocating, thick blackness that presses against the skin and fills the lungs like heavy dust. For 3 days, the greatest empire on earth is entirely paralyzed. No one leaves their bed. No one lights a fire. The Egyptian sun god, Ra, is buried alive in the sky. Men sit on the cold floor of their houses, staring into a pitch-black void, listening to the heavy breathing of their families, wondering if the sun will ever rise again. But the text gives us a very specific timeline for this burial. Exodus 10:22 and 23. There was pitch darkness in all the land of Egypt 3 days. They did not see one another, nor did anyone rise from his place. For 3 days. But all the people of Israel had light where they lived. The word the English translators use for 3 here is the Hebrew shalash. But when the text talks about the climax of a 3-day period, the 3rd day, it uses the ordinal form, shlishi. It appears over 100 times in the Hebrew Bible, and its linguistic root is fascinating. But look closer at the timeline. It takes them exactly 3 days to arrive at the place of the knife. While shalosh simply means the number 3, the ancient root is tied to the word shalish, which was a physical unit of measure, a capacity, a vessel used to carry grain. It is a word of fullness, a word of capacity reached. When the Bible says something happens on the Shlishi day, it is not just ticking off marks on a calendar. It is saying the vessel is full. The measure is complete. The necessary weight has been achieved. You see this exact word echo hundreds of years later in the writings of the prophet Hosea, in Hosea chapter 6, verse 2. Speaking of a broken, exiled people, the prophet cries out, "After 2 days he will revive us. On the 3rd day, on the Shlishi, he will raise us up, that we may live before him." That root changes everything about how you read the darkness. In Egypt, when God plunges the empire into a 3-day abyss, he is not just stalling for time before the final plague. He is filling a measure. He is letting the dead things remain dead long enough to prove they have no power, so that when the light finally breaks, the deliverance is unquestionable. The darkness is not a grave. It is an incubator. And if you zoom out across the rest of the biblical text, that exact duration happens again. And again, a prophet is swallowed into the crushing, suffocating. But this linguistic revelation introduces a brutal problem for anyone actually living through the story. Because while the third day brings the light, the resurrection, and the rescue, you cannot get to the third day without surviving the second. And the second day is where faith goes to die. You know, the second day. It is the longest stretch of time in the human experience. Day 1 runs entirely on adrenaline, the shock of the medical diagnosis echoing in a sterile room, the sudden sting of a betrayal, the violent, breathtaking impact of a loss. Your body is moving, reacting, surviving. You are surrounded by people offering words, bringing meals, trying to hold you upright in the chaos. Day 3 brings the hallelujah. The stone rolls back. The light floods the room. The rescue arrives and the congregation sings. But Day 2 is the Saturday between the crucifixion and the resurrection. Day 2 is silent. It is the space where absolutely nothing is happening. The visitors have gone home. The phone has stopped ringing. You stare at the ceiling in the dark. You feel the cold linoleum floor under your bare feet at 2 in the morning. You listen to the faint, metallic hum of a refrigerator, and you wait for a voice that refuses to speak. You carry the tension locked in your jaw and the heavy, sinking ache, dark, of a massive fish. 3 days. A nation is trapped in the wilderness, waiting for a word in the dust. 3 days. In the center of your chest. Most people abandon their faith on Day 2. They assume the silence means the story is over. They assume the absence of a visible rescue means the absence of God. But look back at Abraham on the dirt path. On his Day 2, there was no ram in the thicket. There was only the blistering heat of the sun, the dust on his sandals, and the agonizing weight of the bronze knife at his side. He had to take another step. And another. And another. If recognizing the biblical weight of this terrifying waiting period is shifting something inside you, you're exactly who this channel is for. Hit subscribe and drop a comment below about the season you are in. Because every week we pull back the layers on these ancient texts to find the hope most people miss. So you keep breathing in the quiet. You keep waking up and putting your feet on the floor. You keep walking through the agonizing middle of the story. Because the silence is not an abandonment. It is a gestation. The dark is doing a work that the light never could. The waiting is stripping away every false idol, every backup plan, every fragile piece of theology that cannot survive the fire. God is not just passing time on Day 2. A broken, bleeding body is wrapped in tight linen and placed on a cold stone floor behind a sealed rock. 3 days. He is excavating you. He is hollowing out a vessel large enough, deep enough, and strong enough to hold the crushing weight of the Shlishi day. But to see exactly how violent and necessary this dark gestation can be, you cannot stay on the dry dirt of Moriah. You have to go into the freezing, crushing deep, because the man who experienced the most extreme Day 2 in the entire biblical record did not survive it on land. The sea crashes. The violent wind tears the sky open. The wood of the ship splinters under the weight of the storm. The sailors grab the prophet. They throw him over the edge. A body hits the water. Salt burns his eyes. The freezing ocean swallows him. He sinks. The pressure builds in his ears. The sunlight above him fades into a dull green, and then into a suffocating black. He hits the roots of the mountains. Seaweed wraps around his head. His lungs scream for air. And then, a shadow moves in the deep. A massive mouth opens. A current pulls him in. Jonah is swallowed alive. He sits in the belly of the great fish. The smell of rot and salt water chokes him. Stomach acid burns his skin. Complete. Heavy. Sensory-depriving darkness surrounds him. There is no escape.